What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 5 of Thoughtseize This, our podcast style recap series every Sunday. Gonna go over a few things like some shout outs for the last week, a little bit of news about pre-releases. Played my first RCQ of the Lorwyn Eclipsed era. Got some cards we're gonna be testing out this upcoming week that I'll go ahead and give a little update on here. So let's just go ahead and start off with the shout outs for the week. I feel like that's normally a pretty easy segue to do. So first off, shout out to the entire legacy format. So I know I've got the big picture up here on screen right now, but as I'm scrolling down the right side, as you'll see, like right under here, so just go like where my Twitter handle is and go down, you'll start seeing some of the results scroll by. Demir in Legacy has just been running rampant. So we got like a challenge win here from Ryuho090 like yesterday. We've got another challenge win from Grindstone Cowboy the other challenge yesterday. This is also combined 8 in 16 top 8 places, so 2 challenges, 4 copies of Demir Tempo in each top 8. We've got like some 5-0s going on, yeah, right there. We've got another challenge top 8. So Demir in Legacy apparently is the place to be. The list is really sweet too. So we see a lot of cards that are actually modern legal, but don't have the same kind of impact. For example, Nethergoyf, Tameo, Brazen Borrower, Murktide, all in here. Get to protect these cards with stuff like Force of Will that modern doesn't have access to, with Daze, Wasteland. But it just goes to show that like this Tameo Brainstorm combination is absolutely absurd. And if you have the chance to do that in Legacy, give it a shot before these cards get banned, because I'm sure something out of the Demir deck is going to go like before too long. So that's my shout out to the entire Legacy format and like the 17 people that are keeping this thing running all through the year. Congrats, Legacy players. Now let's get on to the constructed shout outs, or the standard modern shout outs. First off was Venom 1 came in second place in a standard challenge with Demir. We are going to try to do a few more like non-modern shout outs when we can, when there's a cool result. I believe I saw Venom 1's tweet that they split this challenge with the other winner. So basically a win as far as I'm concerned. Some interesting points about the deck list. The 4 ofs is all of the threats. So 4 Curiosity, 4 Tidebinder, 4 Drowner, 4 Bat, 4 Spyglass, couple Cecil. Obviously, Lorwyn Eclipsed is not legal on Magic Online yet. Will be on Tuesday, the Tuesday after this episode goes live, as well as on Magic Arena. So still got a couple days before that. We've got another 4th place challenge in standard by Kako Ferrer. I don't want to butcher their name, but congrats to them as well. See some interesting inclusions like a Wanshi Tong, 4 Curiosity, and 4 Kaito. We've got an Agna Quella, no idea how to say that one. But it's a land that enters tapped unless you control a basic. Pay 2 in a blue, draw a card, discard a card. So it helps you kind of loot away some dead stuff as the game goes on. We've got some Vrins in the sideboard, 4 Day of Black Sun. I've been a really big champion of 4 sweepers in the sideboard. I think it does a lot of work into the Badger Mole Cub decks. So I don't think I would leave home without it, but big shout out to Kaku for their top 8 finish. And then we've got another standard challenge top 8 from Swift Shadow. Again, 4 Curiosity, 3 Kaito, 3 Preacher of the Schism in the main deck. So a little less interactive, a little more creature heavy. do have 3 sweepers in the sideboard, another preacher, the 4th preacher in the 75, 4th tidebinder, 4th kaito. So a lot of stuff to come in against any of the fair matchups. So shout out to Swift Shadow as well. Then over to modern, we've got shout out DB_control freak, whoever that is. No, I'm just throwing this one out here because we did do a YouTube video on it as well. We ended up top 16 in one of the modern challenges with Aspiring Spikes Dimir Flash deck. So this deck has no sorcery speed plays in the main deck, including no psychic frogs. Really aims to leave up mana to draw cards at the end of your opponent's turn with things like Wanshi Tong, Consult the Star Charts, and prolong the game. So it's much more of like a Dimir control style deck than a Dimir tempo or frog style shell. So we ended up top 16 of this challenge with this list. Shout out as well to ZKG, who ran close to the same 75, a few cards different, and ended up trophying a league like immediately after. So it's interesting to see this flash archetype like pick up a little bit more steam. And the other shout out was to Huyu CD, who came in top 8 of one of the modern challenges at the beginning of the week with Esper Oculus. So the Dimir Oculus shell splashing white in this case for Ketchermos in the main deck, and 2 copies of Pest Control in the sideboard. But most of the deck is very reminiscent of the Oculus shells from the earlier part of the year, with cards like the Graveyard Trespasser in the main deck, a Murktide Regent. We've got a cool cantrip package with the 4 Thought Scour plus 2 copies of Tainted Indulgence for a little more ability to draw into your unearths or ditch an Oculus or Ketchermos from your hand. Then we have some stuff like Dreams of Steel and Oil, Strategic Betrayal in the main, the Boggart Trawler in here to help exile stuff to get your Ketchermos online a bit easier. In the sideboard, there's a Strict Serenade and a Jace the Mind Sculptor. So good cards to bring in against like the Blink archetypes, be able to answer Solitudes or Flages or whatever, and then Jace to start controlling the game, control your top decks, control the board state. So shout out to Huyu CD for their finish. I believe they also had a top 16 and a top 32 in other challenges this week. So a few top 32 finishes, and the top 8. Really awesome work from them. Love to see that. So shout out to all y'all for innovating with the frog archetypes and even for the non-frog variants. Really love to see all the cool lists that are popping up each week. Give some special shout outs. So let's move on to what's going on in the Control Freak stream. This past week was a little bit more standard. Obviously, I've mentioned on stream several times that I hate what I call like the lame duck section of a format's lifetime or of a set's lifetime. So we're getting ready for Lorwyn Eclipsed to be released online everywhere. And the week or so leading up to the new set being released, there's no events going on. Nothing is happening. Nothing's like shaking things up. It's just kind of a dead period. So we're waiting to try out the new cards. All the old stuff is still around, but people are just focused entirely on spoilers. I hate playing during that period because it feels like the games don't matter because things are going to be changing in a week. And you're not testing for anything. So that's usually a period where the stream's a little bit lull. This past week, I was basically working on getting to Mythic on Arena so that we could get a few more prizes, a few extra packs and whatnot to maybe go ahead and pick up some Lorwyn stuff when it comes out. I think as of this recording, there's like 40 hours left on the battle pass, and I think I need 2 match wins to get to Mythic. I think I'm at Diamond 1 with like a win or 2 under my belt. So I just need like 2 match wins to get to Mythic. I'll probably try to knock that out this afternoon. Which the entire run would be with Demir mid-range, almost the exact same 75 the whole way through. So that's we had the challenge on Tuesday. We ended up top 16 with the Demir flash deck. That's about it for this past week. Now let's talk about the pre-release. So I've got some funny stuff from the pre-release. I went up to my LGS on Friday afternoon, and they had a free pre-release starting at 6 o'clock. So I got up there around like 4:30 or something to look through some old stuff, try to find a couple random commons, uncommons I was looking for. Found those. At about 5 o'clock, I go up to the desk. I'm like, hey, I want to pick up these commons and uncommons and sign up for the 6 o'clock pre-release. And I have never done a pre-release at this LGS before. I don't know their normal routine of doing things. So the guy says, all right, well, we don't charge for the pre-release event. We just charge for the kit. So you buy the kit and then you can enter the pre-release event for free. Okay, sure. Well, then I want to buy a pre-release kit and I'll wait around for the pre-release event to start. Oh, we're out of kits. Like, the very first pre-release event starts at 6 o'clock. I'm here at 5 asking for a kit for the very first event, and you're out an hour before the event actually starts. Okay. So obviously I'm curious about how that works out. So there's a few different levels of my approach to this mentally. So first off is, how does this look to new players trying to get into Magic? If you find out the pre-release is at 6 o'clock and you show up for that to the very first pre-release of the weekend and there's no kits left. And that's for like the entire weekend. There are no Lorwyn Eclipsed pre-release kits, period, available. So you don't get to do a pre-release the entire weekend. I started looking around the room and realized that there were a lot of Commander players there that had just bought like 4 or 5 pre-release kits and they couldn't open them yet. They had to wait until 6 o'clock to actually open anything unless you bought like a box. But just players that like had no intention of playing in the pre-release events, just buying a bunch of pre-release kits and sitting on them and not actually like entering the events. And honestly, that was so frustrating to see, because like I've been at other stores before that would schedule like a pre-release event for 6, and they would at 5:30 get everybody to pay, and you get one pre-release kit for that pre-release event. And if you want to enter in another, you could come back to the next pre-release event and buy one more kit and be able to play in the event, or you could buy like your one kit per event and go home if you didn't want to play. But I don't think I've ever seen a store that allowed players to just buy like 5 kits up front, not play in the events, and just go. I understand from the store point of view that they have a limited amount that they're given for the set, so they're not going to have an unlimited amount of pre-release kits. And if they have the opportunity to say, okay, well, we can get all of our money to recoup for these pre-release kits right now and not have to wonder if people are going to keep showing up through the weekend and get all these sold, I understand them from a business standpoint. selling all of the kits immediately. I don't have a problem with that from a business standpoint. But from like a new player getting into the game standpoint or a retention standpoint, it feels really awful if you show up again Friday at 5 o'clock and there are no pre-release kits available for the very first pre-release of the weekend. So very conflicted feeling there. Now I got extraordinarily lucky because I'm a regular at this shop, because the people working there recognize me. I was able to get an unopened pre-release kit from somebody that had already bought one and play in the event. And it was effectively, I let them keep the promo. I got the 6 packs and I built my deck from that. My pool was very, very mid, except for a couple things. So I ended up playing a black-white blight deck, splashing green for a couple cards. The reason I went black-white blight is I had 3 copies of Moonlit Lamenter. I know y'all can't like read this very well, but it's 2 and a white for a 2/5 Tree Folk Cleric. It enters with a -1/-1 counter on it. You can pay 1 and a white to remove a counter from this creature, draw a card, activate only as a sorcery. So it's a 2/5 Tree Folk, enters as a 1/4 -1/-1 counter, pay 1 and a white, remove a counter from it. You get to combine it with cards like Blighted Blackthorn, this 5 mana 3/7 Tree Folk that enters Blight 2. If you do, draw a card and lose a life. So you can put the counters on your Lamenter, remove the counters from it, draw more cards, get rid of the Blight stuff. I've got a couple copies of this 3/2 flyer that enters, you Blight 1 and Dream Caesar. 3/2 flyer for 4, enters, Blight 1. If you do, each opponent discards a card. Put the counter on your Lamenter, remove it later, draw a card. Really cool synergies there. The only rare that ended up playable in my deck was Brigid. So Brigid's 2 and a white for a 2/3/2. 2 and a white for a 3/2 that makes a 1/1 Kithkin. And then in your first main phase, beginning of your first main phase, you can pay a green, flip it into a 3/2 that taps for mana equal to the number of creatures you control. And then you can pay a white in your main phase to flip it back to the front side, make another 1/1 green and white Kithkin. So I was splashing green for that, and a copy of a 4 mana fight enchantment that gives +2/+2. Then like 1 forest had like a changeling that tutors up a land, blah, blah, blah. So my deck was like pretty bad and synergistic, but not top end power. So I decided to enter the event and just said like, all right, as soon as I lose a match, I'll drop from the event, go do something else. First round started and I'm up against another Tree Folk deck, or like predominantly Tree Folk deck. I end up getting Brigid to flip, as well as get a couple of those 2/5s that remove a counter, draw a card, get some blight counters onto them, draw a bunch of stuff. I've got 2 copies of a 6 mana 5/6 Vigilant Tree Folk, this Sun Dappled Celebrant, 4 and 2 white for a 5/6 with Vigilance and Convoke. Very, very important. So I was able to get those out, get my Celebrants going, draw some cards off some of my Blight spells, and end up winning that first round 2-0. I was like, all right, well, I guess I got to stay around for another round. Start the second round, and a very similar play pattern emerges. Draw a bunch of cards, get a couple mid Tree Folk down, get a couple reasonably sized flyers, end up winning that one, go on to round 3. Again, got very fortunate, had some aggressive attacks from my opponent that I was able to capitalize on. Game 1 gets to a point where they're at like 37, 38 life. I'm at like 3. And I get a couple favorable blocks, draw into some stuff that lets me draw some more cards, really manage my life total in a way that allows me to barely stay alive, timely removal spell or two, and I claw back in and end up winning that game. Then game 2, I think my opponent had some mana issues, win that one. Round 4 starts. Game 1, opponent's got like a Sig and some cool draw spells, but I just have like some bigger tree folk than they have stuff that they're presenting. End up winning a very, very long drawn out game 1. Game 2, we actually end up going to time. If we had had a couple more turns, I would have won game 2, but I ended up winning the match 1-0 in turns. Round 5, I played against a cool black-green elves deck. There's a lot of interesting elf synergy in the format, so that was super sweet to see. Including a 4-mana star, power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control and creatures in your graveyard, I think, and it's got trample. So the thing was like a 10/10 staring me down. As well as some other 4-mana 6/6 that draws a card when you play a creature. Some rare elf, so really sweet deck there. Unfortunately, very similar to round 3, my opponent made some aggressive attacks that I was kind of able to capitalize on, just like trading off some small tree folk up for a larger creature on their side, and then find something later to remove another threat and get to attacking. So at the end of this pre-release, I actually ended up winning. We played 5 rounds of Swiss. I actually ended up 5-0, and I was 9-0 in games. So the perfect 5-0, 9-0 pre-release with my janky black-white 1 rare deck. So if you got an option to draft a bunch of blight stuff and like blight payoffs, really, really good. Do not sleep on it. I was highly, highly impressed. But that was the pre-release, and that leads me into the reason I went to the pre-release was to try to get some copies of cards like Reckwitting Hex, because I had a RCQ the following day, and as we all know, now cards are legal on pre-release, so the Lorwyn stuff would be available for the RCQ on Saturday, and I wanted to see if I could pick up some stuff to get ready for that. And that's when things take a funky turn. I could not find any copies of anything that I needed, but fortunately a couple people that I was going to see at the RCQ had cracked a bunch of boxes, had a good bit of stuff, was able to borrow some Reckwitting Hexes from them, already had spell snares, so like Dimir midrange and standard, about to go hard with spell snares and hexes. We get down to the event, everybody's fixing up their deck list last second, getting ready to start, and the judge says that Lorwyn Eclipsed is not legal for the tournament. And like half the room is looking up like, what are you talking about? And a couple players at the event had a one of the like WotC emails, or not emails, but WotC messages. I'll see if I can find it real quick. It was one of the one of these WotC like messages on the Wizards website. I don't know if it says it in this one specifically, but it basically says that Lorwyn Eclipsed is legal starting, or is released starting the 20th or whatever, 23rd, whatever day this upcoming Friday is. It says that's when, yeah, like the set releases January 23rd, and says something similar to it somewhere else. Might not be this exact memo, but says that the set releases 23rd, legal the 23rd or something. And we're all questioning this because there's another WotC memo from Phyrexia All Will Be One that specifically says sets become tournament legal starting on pre-release from here forward. Let me see if I can find that one. I don't know if I'll be able to find it right away. But they basically made a whole announcement. Actually, I know where I can find it. They made a whole announcement about the sets becoming legal in paper the day of pre-release, starting with Phyrexia All Will Be One and moving forward. Yeah, here it is. So starting with Phyrexia All Will Be One, moving forward. Let's see if I can do this. Legality shifts to pre-release. And let's see. Yeah, basically it says like as soon as you have cards, you can play them. Tabletop legality has long been determined by release date, and they're moving it to pre-release instead of release date. We could not find anything that contradicted this. So any other memo from WotC that said, hey, we're changing it back to the release date. Just some vague wording in the Lorwyn Eclipsed pre-release stuff that says it's legal on release. And so all of this was like up in the air last second. I've played pre-release timing RCQs before, and stuff has always been legal as long as it's after the pre-release date. So we had this come up where the judge at the site, like 10 minutes before we're submitting deck lists, is saying Lorwyn's not legal. So we're all rushing to shuffle stuff around. I've brought like a play set of spell snares. I've got 2 Reckwitting Hex in my board. I've got like a Flitterwing Nuisance. I've got a Glenalindra in the sideboard. Like, I've got to change stuff up pretty drastically for a last minute deck submission. And it definitely backfires because I had kind of played what I had available on me, not what I'd been looking at testing. Ended up losing. I ended up 3-2 in the Swiss. So I beat Demir mid-range. I lost to Demir mid-range, but it was to somebody who already had an invite and had already scooped ahead of time. Lost to Mono Red and lost to Is It Looting. Both matchups, I would have loved to have Spell Snare and Reckwitting Hex in my deck, but didn't. Ended up making top 4 on the cut. Lost to Looting again, the same player from the Swiss. Again, would have loved to have Spell Snare and Reckwitting Hex, but it is what it is. So yeah, if anybody knows for sure what the tournament legality around the Lorwyn Eclipsed cards is, and if that stuff was supposed to be legal and we got kind of gypped, I would love to know. It seems like the opinions are pretty back and forth, and we haven't really gotten like an official ruling one way or the other. So if you're a judge and you know for sure, I would love to hear a comment on this this video to let me know. Anyway, I did not end up getting my invite on that one. we'll be trying again at an RCQ in a couple weeks. So segues into this upcoming week, some of the stuff we got going on. We will be trying out Spell Snare and Requiting Hex in Dimir Midrange and Standard online. We've got a Modern Challenge on Tuesday, which I want to try out the Sultai Oculus build with some of the new cards. If you haven't heard about this, there's a couple cards from the Lorwyn Eclipsed set, including Moon Shadow, this 1 mana 7/7 that enters with 6 -1/1 counters on it. Whenever one or more permanent cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, if it has a -1/1 counter on it, you remove that counter. So some of the typical lines would be like, you play a fetch land, you fetch away, Moon Shadow removes a counter, you surveil over a permanent, Moon Shadow removes a counter, one of your creatures dies, remove a counter, Oculus manifests over some permanent into the graveyard, counter. But the cooler things are, if Oculus manifests over a Moon Shadow, then you can pay 1 mana, flip it face up, and it becomes a 7/7 with Menace. It does not get the -1/1 counters because it never entered with them. Entered face down as a creature. So you get to have this really cool interaction with with Oculus flipping over a very big, very fast clock. The other card, the reason to go Sultai, or the two reasons to go Sultai, there's a second pseudo Moon Shadow in the format with Bristlebane Battler, 2 mana 6/6 ward 2 trample, enters with 5 -1/1 counters. So same idea. If you flip it over to Oculus, you don't get the counters on it. You just pay 1 green, flip it face up, have a very big, aggressively slanted creature. Also not too bad to remove some counters from it. It does whenever a creature enters. So an Oculus gets unearthed, manifests, you remove a couple counters, play an Oculus, manifest, remove a couple, play a Moon Shadow, another battle or whatever, remove counters. But the reason this is all an option, if I can remember the name, Hapatra's Mark, is because of Hapatra's Mark, an Amonkhet uncommon. Target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn. Remove all -1/1 counters from it. So you can turn your Moon Shadow into a 2 mana 7/7 vigilance, as well as protect it. You can turn your Battler into a 6/6 ward 2. Really, really good with the Battler because it already has natural protection built in. So you're kind of free to Hapatra's Market. Also protects cards like your Oculus from removal. So fairly synergistic with the rest of what the deck's trying to accomplish, but just gives you additional options to things like Dress Down to get the counters off your creatures or stop them from entering with the creatures. So I'm going to try that out probably in the challenge on Tuesday. It might end up being a Death Shadow build instead of an Oculus build. I'm not sure yet. Options are still on the table, but we'll see kind of what it looks like. And then, like I mentioned, we're going to be trying out Spell Snare and Requiting Hex in Standard, as well as probably Bitterbloom Bearer, Flitterwing Nuisance. Lockmare is one I want to try out as a flex option in Dimir. And we're also going to be talking about color splashes because Lorwyn Eclipsed has brought with it all of the shock lands that we didn't have access to. So I know like Hallowed Fountain is coming into the format. I can't remember all the color combinations. Steam Vents, Hallowed Fountain. It's like not exactly the enemy or ally. There's a couple mismatches in there. But we'll have all 10 shock lands in Standard. So being able to put together a 3-color mana base with Grixis or Sultai or Esper would be pretty easy. Looking at cards that are potentially worth splashing for. If we go white, we've got access to like Voice of Victory, Rest in Peace, High Noon, some removal spells like Get Lost or Seam Rip. If we go Sultai, there's Mosswood Dread Knight, there's a bunch of naturalize effects. If we go Grixis, there's stuff like Kefka, there's all the red removal, Pyroclasms, a Braid. So a bunch of options we have on the splashes if we decide to look that route. We'll let you know farther into the week if I decide one of those looks worth testing. As always, I don't want to splash just for the sake of splashing. I want to splash if there's a problem that's being solved. And the big problem right now is lessons having artist talent and monument of endurance that Dimir can't interact with if they're on the battlefield. So getting to splash for a disenchant effect would be extremely incentivizing. So other than that, that's all the upcoming news. If you have interesting stories from your pre-release, I would love to hear about them. If you played in a tournament this past weekend and Lorwyn Eclipsed was legal, I would love to hear about it. So let me know down in the comments what you got going on. If you got any shout outs you want me to give on the next video, then drop those as well. Always interested in checking out the list. Otherwise, hope you all have a fantastic rest of your weekend. If you got any pre-release events left, best of luck to you. Hope you draft some cool tree folk and run people over. If you got any tournaments coming up, let me know. Otherwise, we'll have links down below to stuff like the Discord if you want to come talk about Lorwyn Eclipsed or talk about any of the upcoming testing ideas, give your suggestions. We've got the Twitter, the first place it gets updated whenever we go live, so you never have to miss a live stream. And then the TCG affiliate link. If you're planning on buying some cards from the new Lorwyn set and you want to support the stream, support the channel, consider clicking on our TCG affiliate link. Gives credit to us after a qualifying purchase within 48 hours of clicking the link. So you don't have to do anything, doesn't take you to a special storefront. Just click the link, then go about making your purchase as normal, and we'll get credit for it. Doesn't cost you anything, but gives a little percentage back to the stream. Other than that, hope you all have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Stay safe, enjoy some good food and company. I will catch y'all back live tomorrow. Adios for now.